What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Strength Coach Rants. Today is going to be a little bit different. I am just going to kind of rant about some things that are bothering me right now. It is September. It's almost October. Seasons have started. You got fall ball, baseball, you got hockey in full swing. Basketball is well on its way to starting within the next kind of month and a half. Tennis is always in season. Same for lacrosse. You've got half the year is devoted to club and the other half is devoted to their high school. Pretty much everybody is in season right now. And when we get done at the end of the summer with these kids and we hand them off to their teams, they are in relatively good shape. Most of them are very reactive, meaning they're very elastic. They can deliver a ton of force in the ground and react off that, meaning they're going to be faster. They jump high. Strength levels are, for most kids that train in my gym at least, in the neighborhood of knocking on elite when it comes to, strength to body weight when it comes to athletes, right? So they're not power lifters, but just about everybody who leaves to go to their team sport has at least a 1.5 times body weight squat by the time they get there, and in the neighborhood of a 2 times body weight deadlift. Now, those numbers mean that they're strong enough to be resilient enough to be able to put enough force in the ground to be fast. In the last typically 4 to 5 weeks, we devote a lot of our time to speed because we've laid that foundation of work capacity and strength and all that. Well, it is almost October, and some of these kids are starting to trickle back in. You get a couple kids here and there that maybe can only come in once or twice a week, which is fine because they've laid that foundation already. They don't need to be in here 3 to 4 days a week to set the foundation. They can just kind of, even more so than maintain what they have. I got kids that PR all throughout their seasons, and they're able to stay in a good position because of the way we manage loads and things like that. But they're coming in. They are slower. They are less reactive. They are less athletic. Their work capacity and conditioning is down, which is absolute insanity because their seasons have started. They should be in the best possible shape. They should be in the best possible position to do the great things on the field that they spent all summer trying to get themselves in the best position to do. But it's weird because these kids are all absolutely overtrained. Now, some of this could be because now they're practicing, which is going to take some out of the tank. They've got school, they've got homework, they've got, a lot of stuff that they have to do. They're playing games. But by and large, what I find is when these kids get to their teams, the antiquated notion that we need a camp to get everybody in shape takes hold, and essentially they become overtrained relatively fast. They don't have a strength stimulus anymore. They're more than likely not really having much of a speed stimulus outside of the drills that they do because the conditioning that they do is very, very high volume, very high time. And it takes too much out of the tank and doesn't allow them to devote the amount of time that they need to things like strength and power and speed and mobility. These kids come back and it's like they've never gone through a mobility routine ever in my gym. It's insane how fast it happens. It's been a month to a month and a half, and half the adaptations that we chased over the summer where it's 10 steps forward, 5 steps back. And that shouldn't be the case because their sports demand these things. Their sports demand highly mobile athletes. Their sports demand speed. They demand elasticity and reactiveness. They demand good conditioning, and somehow everything is worse. Now, some of that's expected again because they're not having the same strength stimulus that they had before. Right? We can't devote the same amount of time and effort and energy to those things because they have practice and they have games and they have to be ready for those. I'm not under the impression that their training should come first at this point because this is why they train. They play their sport. But for these athletes to have been gone for a month and be in a worse place than we were a month ago, it blows my mind. And I asked this question to kind of people in my Facebook audience the other day, what the hell are you guys doing with these athletes, you coaches? Youth coaches are absolutely destroying the long-term development of these kids. A lot of these kids, if they continue down this path, are going to be the best that they're ever going to be when they're 14, 15, 16 years old because they have such a big gap in their training. Some of these kids I only get for the summer, meaning I'll get them maybe the tail end of May. Some of these kids only June and July, and then in August, instead of training that little bit, they go to prepare for their sport, which is okay, I get. But that's 2 months out of 10 months, right? You cannot make enough strides. In 2 months, we're kind of where we need to be to start focusing a little bit more on speed. 2 months isn't enough time to develop a total athlete. If you think about it, if you're like, let's say you're coming in 4 days a week, you're super dedicated, or even 5 days a week with like an active recovery session, like my higher level kids do, 8 weeks, right? June, July, let's call it 9 weeks just because there's 30 and 31 days in the month. Like that is 9 squats, 9 deadlifts, 8 benches, right? That's not a lot of time to really get to where you're trying to go. It's a week or two of like just getting the motion or the movement back underneath them before we can even really start to progress in any given way. So, or any meaningful way rather. So if you come in and I've got June and July, I have 9 weeks, we spend 2 weeks just getting you back to where you need to be just so that we can start to like the progressive overload that's going to get you to where you want to be, right? So it's 2 weeks. Now we have 7 weeks. That means 7 times you're going to squat before you have to go back on the field. You've got to be completely prepared to do what you have to do on the field with 7 weeks of like preparation. It's insane to me. So they take this first month back and they condition, they beat these kids down, and practices are like 3 hours long with like an hour-long conditioning session, which is absolutely insane to me. I've got a football kid that comes in and he says that they spend 3 days a week about 45 minutes on conditioning for football, right? And they're running gassers, they're running like 110s, they're running 300s. And the funny part about this is that football is a sport that's played like 4 seconds at a time. So why am I running 110 yards or gassers or 300s that are going to take me 45 seconds to a minute to complete if I only need, right, 4 to 5 seconds at a time? It's insane to me, and it's really sad because a lot of these kids already created their base, right? If they're training over their summer, and most of these football programs do, right? You have football, you have summer conditioning and summer weights that you have to do with the team. You should already be where you need to be, right? It shouldn't be this 3-4 weeks of intensive conditioning because one of two things is going to happen. You either have kids that are already ready and it's going to like screw them up, it's going to set them back, or you have kids that aren't ready and you're going to end up hurting them, right? So this whole notion of like camp for high school sports, even much less college and pro sports, is the dumbest thing. You should be focusing on skill set. You should be focusing on like learning the playbook. You should be focusing on things that are not conditioning. With those 45 minutes a day, that kid that I mentioned before, 45 minutes-ish, 3 days a week, that's 2 hours and 15 minutes that could be better spent getting better at football, right? And we're not talking about guys in their late 20s that are in the NFL that have already created their skill set and are just, trying to keep their bodies in a position where they can continue to play as long as they can. We're talking about kids that are trying to develop a skill set, trying to develop, football, hockey, basketball, baseball IQ. Why take that time, right, to condition when they don't need it? It's insane to me. Build better drills that are going to like tackle the demands of the sport and challenge their conditioning levels at the same time, right? If football is a game played roughly 4 seconds at a time on average, right? You got some plays that are like a second. You got some plays that are like 10, 15 seconds, right? But by and large, somewhere between like 4 and 7 seconds is where you're going to be on the field. Why not design drills where the athlete is going to have to be going all out for 4 to 7 seconds at a time? That's going to like directly mimic the skill set, the movement skill, the energy systems, every single thing that they need for the sport. It's going to mimic it in a way that we just can't replicate when it comes to conditioning drills. Plus, you get the football side of it, or you get the hockey side of it, the basketball, the baseball, whatever the sport is, you get to like actually work on skill set acquisition and development while conditioning. It'll also keep the kids a lot more engaged. The episode I did last week on hockey conditioning, like if I know like I'm conditioning at the end of practice, I'm probably going to pull the chute. I'm probably going to say, all right, well, I got 45 minutes conditioning at the end of football. I'm not going to go as hard as I can. Like, I don't want to put myself behind the 8 ball. I don't want to die at the end of practice because I've already expended every ounce of energy I had. It's a mountain to understand. Like, it's like looking at a mountain, rather, to understand that you have a ton of conditioning after kind of destroying yourself. So, sport coaches, please stop with the conditioning and start like building drills that will address this need for conditioning in a manner that's more specific to the sport. Again, these kids should have their bases set. If their bases aren't set, then sorry, you're behind the 8 ball. Maybe you don't get a starting position. You didn't do the things you were supposed to do. Like outside of the season, you come in ill prepared. You've got to pay a price for that. And that price for most kids conditioning isn't going to be a price that they care about. It's going to be playing time, because that's why they all dress. That's why they all put on the gear. That's why they put on the sweater or the jersey, because they want to play. And if they're not ready to play and you have to hold them back, that's going to be a lot more motivating and a bigger factor in their success and coming around to doing the things that they need to do. So when it comes to early in the season, stop with this conditioning. They don't need it. They already have it. You can build drills that are a lot more specific to the demands of the sport that will also challenge their conditioning levels, and it will lead to better outcomes because kids will be more dialed in. They'll be competing. They're not just running aimlessly or skating aimlessly or doing log rolls or bear crawls for 100 yards that have absolutely no bearing on their ability to play the sport of football, baseball, basketball, hockey, soccer, whatever the sport is. They will actually get better at the sport. And I think we're doing ourselves a huge disservice by saying we need to win in the fourth quarter, the second half, or the third period, or whatever, the ninth inning. We're going to outlast everybody. Well, why not get better for like the first 3 innings or the first half? Why not win the game in that aspect at that point in time, as opposed to thinking that we're going to have to outlast this other team? If you're good enough and conditioned enough early in the game, that's going to take care of itself. We don't have to devote hours and hours and hours to not getting beat at the end of the game if we're already well ahead, earlier in the game. So my advice, if you're a youth athletic coach, stop with the conditioning. They don't need nearly as much as you think they do. It's actually making them worse. They're overtraining. You're going to end up getting kids hurt, and you're really destroying their long-term potential when it comes to athletic development and success in the sport that they're playing. So that's all I have for today. It was quick. It was 11 minutes, 30 seconds. Hopefully you learned something. I just needed to get in front of the mic and complain because I'm a little perturbed to see this happen, because it is 2023 and their universities are pumping out 30,000 exercise science and ex-phys and applied physiology and kinesiology majors a year. And still we have this same knuckle dragging mindset when it comes to youth sports, when they need substantially more development than they do conditioning adaptations, which are relatively quick to come by. So that's it. Hope you learned something, and we'll see you next week.